and that's interesting too. And I did some work on hyperknowledge claims, which I think is relevant, but you know what, I'll wait on that. So no, I think let's go with the, I'm interested in the multi-premise claim examples and how you think about it now.
And I have a quick, short topic.
Go for it.
Or let me bring it up and then everyone can shout me down. I would still kind of, we're defining the definitions and Steven's not here, so this is probably wrong for me to say, but I would still like to go more of an agile process and start with minimal set, which may not be doable till we get a definition, but even if it's wrong, even if the first iteration is wrong, I'd almost like us to say, we agree on here's the name of the string that represents a single expression of a claim, whatever we call a claim. And, here's how we want to kind of link them together. And then adjust the model as we add new requirements rather than trying to have a perfect kind of dictionary, which is what I feel like we're kind of going for.
Okay, I'll tell you why I think we're going for that. All of us have done the first iteration and even a fairly complete one. And I think we're trying to go beyond the first iteration because we've all hit the limits of our first iteration. So yeah, sure, agile, but agile is about learning from our mistakes and a lot of, I'm introducing this complexity because this is what simplicity I floundered on in my first iteration. So let's learn about one another's mistakes, but that does mean introducing more complexity because the simple things we've tried, we've seen where they fail, why they don't work, and let's learn from that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all valid. That's all correct too. Yes, that makes sense. I guess my unfounded fear is that the scope is a bit out of control. I don't know if there's some way we can wall some things. Is there anything we can wall off so that it does look like it has a limit? Like, at one point we did kind of say we're not going to go down to what you were talking about. I'm so sorry, I forgot the terminology, but where you're breaking down the statements, the wording into its individual parts, or not even the actual wording, but
it seems the topics, yes. It seems that you're not interested in entity recognition, which I think is a mistake, by the way.
No, I'm just saying that I don't think we can do it all at once. So, but if it's necessary to reach the next level of iteration to go down that path, then that's fine. But I don't want us doing it just because we think it's important. A lot of things are important. It's the priority that's the thing.
Where I agree with you is that doing everything at once is difficult, but I think my approach now, and I know it's very anti-agile, but sorry, it's because I've been down that path.
Yeah, agile is not the end all be all. So
yeah, is let's think of the end goal and then let's think of a simple path to the end goal. But what I'm saying is, if we don't have the end goal in hand, and we do, okay, this is the first iteration, it's very easy to get oneself into a dead end where bringing back the complexity is difficult because you haven't put the complexity points at the right place, if you see what I mean. Like, we have to be aware of the extension points. So if we simplify in a way that allows the complexity to be brought back in. And there's some things that are easier to extend than others. Like, identifying topics can be left for later, but the ability to understand that topic identification is a thing, I think, is something that is very hard to add as a second stage. Same with multilingualism, same with, of course, the issue of multi-premise claims, however we do it. I think these... What?
version control and history is also very difficult.
Yeah. That's a good example.
I don't know. In all my systems, I've added those.
Yeah,
on
so
at the end.
looking at it another way, I was going to say sort of the same thing.
Go ahead. Tim.
I think, like, are you guys hearing me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think another way of putting it maybe is what we need to agree on is feature set. What we think the CD needs to support, or whatever we're trying to interchange here needs to support. And we probably need some principles that guide what should be considered an MVP feature, and what is kind of an extra feature that we could do later or something. And I think it's easier if it would be for us to agree on feature sets than on some other design, for example.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, I just wanted to mention, because I mentioned history, which is a controversial topic, because for the actual thing to work and do what it should do, I think we don't need history. But if you design a system and try to add history afterwards, like in the software architecture, then you basically have to redo it. So I agree
in the architecture. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
So I agree in the architecture, but that's when you start putting pencil to code, or keyboard to code. But we're not even close to that piece. We're just talking about our entities in a format. I mean, I think we have to have history pretty early, but like in our current scope, are we also talking scoring? Which I would, that's my big deal. And I'm like, well, let's put that off to later and let's figure out what our entities are. So.
Yes, I agree that scoring is a good example of something that's easier to add afterwards, though we should be aware of it also, that the duplication should not be done in a way that hurts scoring. So we need awareness of scoring, but it's easier other than silly mistakes like that. It's easier to put scoring as a layer. It's a good example.
Except that I'm somewhat proposing the opposite, which is I think we should talk about what the system, not in MVP form, but what the system should support. I think we should be clear on that. That doesn't have to define order of implementation, but when we define that, we want it to support scoring, and we want it to support scoring for the following reasons. To me, kind of a first list of features would be all the features we can agree on should eventually be supported.
Yes.
Because that really gives us the end goal of where we all go together. And
no, that's
when
what I'm saying.
Like, for example, multi-planes.
Whoops, losing you. Anybody else can hear Tim at this point?
No.
Sorry, Tim, we've lost you.
But yeah, I guess kind of to this point, do we feel like we have a list of, he just dropped off, a list of our ultimate feature set?
Yes, I think we do agree, actually, that's a useful thing to have.
Later, especially when there's...
Okay, Tim, you had dropped off for a while, so we didn't hear anything for a good minute. But I do agree that ultimate feature set is absolutely worth doing. That is full agreement.
No, we kind of...
Okay, one other point is I think a clear kind of, when we're talking about MVP feature set, things we don't quite agree on whether or not it should be in there. Debate a little bit, but then maybe we put it on the side and say it's not necessarily MVP feature, quote unquote feature. But if we can at least find exactly all the points we agree need to be there, then we've got some pretty clear map they're going to do.
Right. Okay, I thought you were arguing for the kind of full feature set versus the MVP feature set. Those are very different. I'm saying let's think about the full feature set and then see which ones are MVP. Which I would favor.
No, yeah, I agree with that.
Good.
I agree.
So how far away from that? We have the CD white paper, which has a pretty big feature set, and then Marc Antoine's topics, and then I don't know if we hit history in the CDL white paper. Is that it?
And I think
do we need to?
That's more concise than the white paper. It's
yeah.
To do with it.
Yeah. I agree. A single list somewhere would be
like
helpful.
A description of the whole thing that's as short as possible.
A one-pager.
Yeah, and there are specific items in the white paper that aren't fully evolved, and like this might be interesting. I'm starting to think is interesting.
Well, I think we've done We've done a lot of work redefining things, such as the notion of context, I think, was very vague in the white paper, and we've done a lot of work evolving that notion, and I think that's useful. So we need to revisit some elements of the white paper from that standpoint. I think all the work we have been doing these past few weeks on is an argument, a claim, multi-premise claim, that's all part of their details up to a point, but the devil's in the detail. But it's true that there's something such as high-level features, such as history, that's very important. My big addition is not, I mean, yes, it's topics, but my big addition is the notion of viewpoint and being able to designate a viewpoint as an entity. I think in a way that's almost antithetical to the white paper, but it shouldn't be in some ways because you want to speak about this idea as it is discussed from that viewpoint, as opposed to that idea as it's discussed from that viewpoint. But I don't know if there's agreement on that. For me, that's a core hyper-knowledge goal. I don't know if it's a CD goal. By the way, sorry, I'm going to introduce a totally...
Well, maybe...
How are people feeling about the Harper's letter?
I'm actually not familiar with what you're referring to.
Oh, okay. So there's been letters signed by a lot of famous intellectuals and infamous intellectuals, let's put it this way. Basically arguing for, on the one hand, what we are arguing for, that is cordiality, and let's evaluate all arguments at face value, and let's, you know, depersonalize arguments and not cancel people, and against cancel culture. And on the one hand, this sounds all good in theory, but then you look at the signatories and there's a lot of very clearly proponents of hate speech. And so there's a lot of people saying, you know what, this abstract argumentation and call for civility, well, first it's hypocritical because these people, like a lot of hate speech proponents who claim they want civility have been using canceling on other people. And it's a way to keep people who have power in power. And basically it's ignoring power dynamics. So I found that really interesting from the standpoints of our project to see how whether you've been following that argument, and there's been a counter letter, which I haven't read yet. It's a fascinating
This is the letter that J.K. Rowling signed, that known for that.
J.K. Rowling, yes, that's the one. There were
Harry Potter.
Yeah, of course, Pinker signed it. It's consistent. Chomsky signed it. It's consistent. Those are people. But you also have like very clear right-wing, Breitbart type people. So it's complicated. Well, it's not that complicated, but yeah, Chomsky being
I
there.
wrote an article. Yeah, I wrote an article that more or less states my view on this. I'm not an academic, so it's not a noteworthy article, but I show it to people every now and then. And my take on this is that free speech is something we should be all for and promote the moment we have a meritocracy of ideas, an idea marketplace, which is the moment that debates get decided based on the merits of the idea and not based on the power or the quality, or the rhetoric, the truth of the speaker. The moment decided on their own merits as opposed to who's saying it or how they're saying it or whatever. That's the moment we should be 100% for free speech and against quote unquote cancel culture. Until then, ideas are fought out in a quote unquote information war. It's a power struggle. So my view of CD is the tool to change that dynamic. But until we have the CD, information exchange is a power struggle. And so, we just got to make sure that people aren't abusing that power struggle, that ideas are able to get heard, but that they're not hurting people and not being used to hurt people. So, cancel culture is me seeing culture play out. It's people trying to change norms. I guess that sums up my viewpoint.
Let me just interject real quick and just say I think that is all an interesting discussion, and it does go on what we're doing. I would still like to focus on the feature list.
Fair enough. No, I was curious if others have.
Yeah.
Good point.
I just say we could definitely designate a couple hours to that.
Could we share that Could you share that document?
Yeah, it is in the CDL blah 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 thing, but let me.
Okay, I'll
make it
I'll
easier.
No,
there's too many things in there. Let me share. What's the share button? There's a button that actually says share. Name before sharing features. Okay. Yeah, whatever.
Meeting notes folder. Okay.
Good link. Oh no, I'm sorry. It wasn't in the meeting notes folder. I put it in the wrong place. I put it in the main CDL folder. That is the proper place for it. So I will move it. But until then.
I have access to CDL, main CDL folder.
Yeah, I just put it in the router there because I hadn't figured out where to put it. But let's see, move. Do we have that as one of the white main folders in the
There's
CDL
one
folder?
called Hangout. The one is called Hangout, the one I'm talking about. Doesn't seem to be a top level one.
There we go. So yeah, it's the one in there called features that we'll rename it appropriately.
Oh.
And then let me see if I can get a link.
And then I have access. That's it. I don't need.
Just to make it in case anyone else is having trouble finding the folder. But yeah, and I was just finding short-term phrases for us that we can, because I didn't know what to call as a feature set, the claims and ability for whatever we call them to communicate with everything else. If you want to rename that to entity references, you can. I actually don't like the term topics because
there's a reason.
It has a different meaning to me.
Yeah, but it's important to maintain topic with the topic map history. I do it a bit as a favor to Jack, but it's,
Oh.
and the problem is entity is too vague. Topics is as in topic map, so it's referring to a whole data construct.
Well, can we call it topic maps? Because I mean, a topic to me is, you know, a topic that you're discussing. That's a pretty common term.
Can we put for each of these features why? Because I think the guide understanding of the feature itself is, you know, why we need this feature. Like, why do we need history? To me, we need history for creating trust in the system, because then people can verify that there's no there's no corruption of the debate, right? There's no censorship going on. So I think the WYSI helps explain this feature.
Yeah, although this could be a rather large document doing that. I mean, I'd rather have it link out to the reasons why, so we can have a short list, but unless it's really quick. I mean, I think for history, you could just say transparency, and that's a good reason why, maybe. But I could write a whole book on why we should have scoring. And this is really just a quick one for us to talk about. So I don't think wordsmithing something for other people right now. So if we have a debate about whether something's useful or not, let's talk about that now. Later on, we can define why.
I mean, it's just a couple words on each. Like context, as defined by CD, the whys are disambiguation, improved navigation. It's a very kind of limited set. You throw out a couple words, I think it helps. I don't know.
And topic mapping is different from context, right? Or are they the same? Or I guess if we don't know, we have to list them separately.
It's an overlap. I would say it overlaps with the CD concept of context.
What were the reasons why on that one for context?
Disambiguation, deduplication, and navigation.
Which context do you mean? Sorry, we spent a lot of time on redefining context, and I'm not sure.
Context, CD context.
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
the CDL context, which is not, yeah.
Which
I don't remember how
I
we
believe is underdefined.
disambiguate. Well, the problem is the CDL context is defined as an implementation. It's not defined as a dictionary definition, a definition. So I don't think we've taken the glossary down to the level to where you can better define CDL context. We haven't linked those two things together.
Right. So in other words, like CDL context as a feature could go away. Really, the reason you want it, which is ambiguation, is the feature. Right?
Yes. Yes. I'm saying that I didn't name deduplication as a reason to do topic mapping, and
although does that call? I'm sorry. Go ahead,
no,
Mark.
it's also true of disambiguation. Navigation is more interesting. And
does that all fall under community curation, the disambiguation or duplication, or just that without community is a feature unto itself?
I think it's a feature unto itself. You can do that as an individual.
I don't know if community curation is a necessary feature. Curation is a necessary feature.
I think we'll debate which of these are. Right now we're in the brainstorming phase of capturing everything, and then later we can have a arm wrestling match to see which stays in. And I'm leaving disambiguation and deduplication together because to me they're
okay. So let's have navigation elsewhere. And what do we mean by navigation?
What
do we? Go ahead.
Tim, you might.
Oh, I was just going to say that the community curation versus non-community curation is exactly what I was trying to explain about quote unquote MVP feature set, which is we can all agree there needs to be curation, but maybe we don't agree if it needs to be community curation. And that would indicate to me that that's a point that's not an MVP feature. It's rather different people are allowed to experiment with their version of that until we come up with something that works. Like there are decisions that are going to be more empirical based and top down, and those are the points where we can allow variation.
Yeah, so we should have a separate line item for curation tools. Oh, so in their history, someone put, and it may have been, I don't know if, so you want to be alerted to those changes in definition under history. I would say that notifications is a separate feature, which
That could
requires
be.
history.
It's true that in a way, notification doesn't even require history, but I think it does.
Right.
But in theory, you could just say, oh, it's new. Then I'm not telling you what changed. You have to remember, but that's horrible, of course. I think history is also interesting in terms, let's face it, of, sorry, but I'm a bit of an academic, so scholars will want to study this, remember how useful the Wikipedia history was to scholars. I think the same can be done here.
Yeah, I just don't want to get real in depth on these whys because that's not the point of this. Only if we disagree.
It will matter when we want to prioritize things for an MVP.
Yeah, but we're not there yet. I'm just saying it's not a short list if we put all the whys in here.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
How different is this reputation from scoring? I'm sure you have more in mind than scoring, but is it related to scoring or just the kind of scoring you're thinking of and blah, blah, blah?
I think it's completely unrelated to scoring. I'm thinking of like a generalized change proposal system that allows you to do changes to the model, to the whole argument graph. And scoring is something that's a function from the argument graph to some numbers. That's how I see it.
Okay, fair enough. By the way, for me, the question of changes, if I were thinking about how I design it, reputation is one axis, but the other question is I would care about who expressed the claim in the first place, because I'd be curious, is that what you want to say? I want to at the very least alert the original definers, plural, because maybe they feel that the redefinition loses or diverges from their understanding, so at least a split needs to be made. The question is the proposed change an evolution of the topic or is it a split of the topic? And that's a very important difference. And that, deciding whether it's a split, you need to get the original definers involved. So it's not just do you have high enough reputation, but getting some kind of okay from the original definers that, yeah, this is still the same topic versus no, we have to split there. See what I'm saying?
I don't know how to write that, so.
Let me.
There's some other basic features that we want, like that should go in here, like spam protection, spam resistance, sense resistance, some basic umbrella qualities like that. Maybe we should capture that, you know, we want it to be, how do you say it? Crowdsourced? I don't know how you would write crowdsourced, but we want it to be fully open participation, asynchronous, right?
Yeah, maybe we could just jot those down for now. That may fit into community curation. Go ahead, Mark.
Are you arguing for an informal side channel? Because that's often useful. Like a chat on the side so that people can have meta conversation without having to do it in the formal space.
No, I'm not. I'm on the fence on anyway.
So am I.
I just mean like people should be able, anybody should be able to add a claim from at any time from anywhere, basically. I mean, it's somewhat obvious, that's the whole thing we're doing, but it should be stated.
That was Felix, I think. I think it's chat on the side. Let's.
Yeah.
So if that's not it, I'm not sure what you meant by async. Sorry.
Just that multiple people can participate at different times.
Oh yeah, okay.
There's a usability requirement that I like to place on the CD, which is any claim and its principal arguments should be understandable in under a minute. It's like a design goal.
Yeah.
Oh, I just noticed under argument map there's go ahead, Tim.
It's another use case that I believe needs to be supported in linking is the sending a link to a specific view on the
yes,
date.
vital.
Deep linking? Is that clear enough, or do we need to say more?
That's enough for now.
You want to say by...
And what about curated views? I think they're essential, but I don't know what you feel about
I don't even
them.
know if we need to call them curated, just the fact that the system has multiple views? Or, well, multiple viewpoints? Or
it would be the ability to link
to?
basically what you're seeing at the moment. Like you're seeing something, you want to be able to share that link to somebody.
Well, yeah, so that's what deep linking is. But
no, deep linking is deep linking to a specific node, I say, in the graph, and maybe it's neighborhood. But okay, let's say I create a view with this thing and that thing and that thing and that thing. So I create a subset view, like these are the things. Now, if you have a tree, that doesn't make as much sense. We did it in Idealoom with subtrees, like a tree made of a subset of the tree. But it was important to us to be able to say, let's just look at these things, wherever they are, but how these things talk together. And yes, if there's links between them, you'll see that there is a link, but sometimes we even introduce shortcuts, like a non.
I mean, yeah.
What I would say is deep linking, including state. Whatever views the system supports that let you kind of organize what you're looking at, you should be able to link to exactly that view.
Okay, so
Yeah,
I think I agree with that, but I think I'm talking about something else. I'm speaking about curated views. That is a view which is not just, how should I put it? Whatever of the global view you're seeing at that time, it's, I want to create a view with this element, that element, that element, that element, because I'm making an argument about that, like a subset view. Well, curated view is clear enough, I think.
Well, are you saying like a viewpoint on an argument? So I may think that these subclaims are distracting, so I want to have a view about them. Or are you talking about just generally in the system, I'd want, I don't know how to say it, but the login button on the right instead of, just visually what's displayed?
No, the former, definitely. I'm saying these arguments are distracting, but I also want to put this in context of this other claim, which is totally elsewhere in the tree. And I want to have those two subtrees put one aside the other without all the intervening structure, this kind of stuff.
And this curated view should be a first-class citizen, you say, right?
Exactly what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's even, I'm trying to think of a better way to phrase that. Go ahead, Mark, if I was interrupting you.
Okay, the reason I think it's important is that this is a system that will grow. Showing everything is going to be not the preferred view in most cases. You'll want filters, you want this. Now, the filters totally enter in the former deep linking, including state view, because we'll have filters. But I'm saying sometimes it's good to be able to say, let me make this thing, for example, if I'm proposing something, I'm proposing a different view. I'm proposing a different structure, right? It's not just, proposing is not just adding things, it can be reorganizing things. So that's also a curated view. I mean, again, it's a different use case, and I shouldn't keep them separate probably, but proposal can go deep. And being able to talk about one such proposal, saying, I want to put this in relation to that. I want to compare those two arguments, or say how this argument is related to that argument, which, the link hasn't been accepted yet, but I want to have the view where they have been done. They have been put in regards, and I want to show that, point people to it and say, hey, let's discuss this. Now, maybe it's possible to just do it with proposal. I'm proposing new links, and I have a view centered on those proposed links, but I'm not sure it's always possible to do it that way.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I say deep, go ahead, Tim.
If the purpose of the feature is to support curation, I would say let's leave it as a curation thing. If the purpose is to be able to show curated views to other people, my fear is if the tool gets too powerful, you can show distorted views of debate. So you need to balance between showing somebody something interesting and totally manipulating what they're seeing. And so, in perspective, I would be hesitant to put in that feature and add like that.
Okay, that's a perfectly interesting argument. I've thought about it. I think that what we can do is have a fully curated view, perfectly partial. I think it's very much for the purpose of communication and sometimes even pedagogy. You want to start small and say, let's start with this argument and then I'll grow it and then, go walk people through adding arguments. So yes, that's the purpose. Now, the danger you speak of, you can always have a little, icon or something saying, this is partial, there's stuff missing, here's how to get the full view, to get back to the greater view where you have the full picture. So there should be a very obvious affordance saying, this is curated, this is someone's viewpoint. If you want to put it in the broader context of the canonical debate, it's one action. And make it very prominent, but, and have it very clear. Yeah.
As a feature, I would agree, as a counterpoint or part of the deep link with state feature, that include very clear signaling back to a clean slate view, like a very clear signal looking at an altered point,
yeah,
or something.
It has to be there. I agree totally.
I think the rest is kind of, yeah. The rest is kind of implementation details, so maybe getting too low. I don't want to state it as a specific must-have feature that you want to be able to show multiple trees together and that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, but we're not. We're not talking must-have features. So
yeah,
these are proposed features.
I agree that this one is maybe not MVP.
Okay.
But I do think you'll be surprised at how vital it will be for adoption. I mean, it's something that we didn't have an ideal loom, or we had a very partial implementation of it. And it was a showstopper for a lot of people because, oh, it's too complicated seeing everything. People want to be able to say, let me just show this, because I can, you know, basically storytell around that view, but I cannot storytell about the global view. And I think that's fine, as long as people are aware this is a partial view. And I agree totally, it has to be very prominent. This is a partial view.
Okay, I think, is Felix going through a major reconstruction of this document?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm
I just think
trying to orthogonalize a little bit.
Well, I mean, I didn't want it to go deeper. It's supposed to be a simple list. And I also, well, the problem is, I think you took off the distinction between community curation and curation tools, which is whether you open them up to the community or not. And those are two different features.
Right, okay, got it. So yeah, that's why I just put curation to the top, because these are basically the operations
I don't
model. Yeah,
I just don't see community curation in there anywhere now. Which is different than from curation.
Yep, it's this one actually.
Well, okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways to do community curation. Reputation is just a small subset. I mean, it's the most used subset.
Okay, I removed that because I added that to make an example to know what I mean. But
yeah,
I guess everybody has a picture of what community curation is. Do you agree that I put the top 3 points under the point model? Expressive data model?
Well, I think it's confusing when you say data model as opposed to feature, because to me, a data model is completely separate from a feature. Like they're distinctively supposed to be separate and never combined. To use a data model to implement the feature.
Or let's say the, I don't know, argumentation model? Claim? I don't know. You know what I'm talking about? Like the whole, what are we talking about? What is the structure
well
working on?
Yeah. I mean, you're right. That's, yeah. I was thinking systems model, but there's a conceptual model.
I could say like structure, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to phrase because we've had such disagreements on what the structure is that we don't have a word that says whatever we agree on how we're going to arrange these arguments, claims, and stuff.
I mean, we could just call it algebra.
No.
I think that goes against several people's sensibility.
Yeah.
I love, mind you, I love the notion of algebra, but the question, and I think that has to be part of the structure up to a point, is we have to say, and for me that's a key feature. I don't know if it fits in the argumentation in the structure. Okay, this line I would call what is the system working on, or what is the, you know,
adjust it if you like. Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with anything.
No, but do we have consensus what the system is working on?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
Okay. And one thing I think is still important as a feature, informal claims and structured claims. And I think it's important that we need both to be first-class objects. We allow both. It's important. Structured claims are something else, and this is where the topic mappings comes in, really. An argument is this link between claims. Can we infer these claims from those claims? And again, those are probably always more structured.
And there was no agreement on the whole what the system is working on yet, right? We just some words in the glossary, but and everybody has something similar in mind, I guess.
I don't know if we have full agreement, but I think we are going around these objects. Now, whether we agree on all of them is another story, but the definitions are like, these are things we may want the system to work on, whether we do, but I think there's more and more agreement that those are concepts and that this is the kind of stuff we want to represent. Is that exactly the set we want to represent? That's not clear. But these things are kind of at the core of what we're talking about. I guess what I agreed on.
Yeah, I guess what I don't like about using this ontology and this deep linking is that at some point we're going to need to kind of prioritize and order these, and topic mapping to me would have a different priority than argument mapping. So if they're nested, I can't move them around. Now we can restructure it when we have that discussion.
Yeah. Well, the question is, what's a structured claim, really? The structured claim is about identifying entities in the claim, right? Maybe you don't want to do that, but do you have another way to go from informal claim to structured claim without identifying entities? And whether we do that as topics is a separate question, but when you think of structured claims, what do you think about?
Well, I think they're unnecessary. So that would that's why I don't have a way to get there, because I don't want to go there. But okay, I'm fine if y'all go there.
No, but okay, but that's fine. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying topic mapping and structured claims are related. You don't believe that structured claims are necessary. That's perfectly legitimate. I disagree, but I do agree that maybe this is non-MVP. But on the other hand, one thing I've been claiming from the start is we will want to go there eventually. So let's make sure that whatever data structures we do at the implementation level doesn't make it too hard to reintroduce them later. That's been my leitmotif. Whether we want them at MVP stage, that's a discussion, and I'm open to have that conversation. But I think they're useful. That's another conversation. And I think let's think about them even at MVP stage, because introducing them later could be too complicated. So I'm not saying let's introduce them now, but let's think about our data structures so we can introduce them with minimal rewriting.
Right. Well, yeah, and I agree with all that. What I'm saying though is the way it's structured in the document right now, it's difficult to use this document to have that prioritization and inclusion discussion because we nested things as opposed to keeping it more flat. But we can rearrange it when we get to that point. We also have a very big mix between the whys and the which of these are features, which of these are whys. It's just kind of.
But okay, it's funny. I had this discussion. I saw this point that Stephen was making about he was against my using sets for multi-premise arguments, because, oh, if you have a set, you'd have to agree or disagree with the set as a whole, and we want finer control than that. And I said, I don't believe that. I don't think if we have a set, we have to agree with, disagree with the set as a whole. We can agree with, disagree with individual entities. This is exactly what's happening now. These are things we may want in the argument map. We may agree and disagree with this one individually. It's okay. It's not because it's structured that way that you cannot disagree with structured claims.
No, what I'm saying is that if I wanted to have this document in an ordered priority state from party 1 to party 2, party 3, party 4, if I drag this down and say I want this to be the last priority in the system, it's now not underneath. You know, which was the point for me creating this document, but that was not made clear.
I see.
Work with gray text.
I think
yeah, because that's helpful.
Hoping the logical structure to match with other structures like time or priority is totally. It's like asking two trees to match. It may not happen, and yeah.
Well, right. And so the purpose of this document was to list out the features and start prioritizing them. But now it's an ontology of grouping of structures, and that's not what my original intent was. So we're going to have to rewrite this data in order to prioritize it, which is fine.
Okay. It's interesting because I had a different idea of the document. I thought it was like a concise description of the full-blown systems as we have in mind to align ourselves, and then derive software architecture or prioritization from that. Interesting. Yeah.
Right.
That is such
that's probably the right way to do it. That's probably the right way to do it. I just wasn't thinking that deep into it. And I didn't want to go to this level of complexity, although we do need to have a separation between these two. Because I mean, you know, concise depends on the context. And the reason why it's concise is because it's in a context that you can leave information out because there's unspoken agreement. And it just seems like we're going down into documenting the things that we already agree on as opposed to documenting our differences. But it's not a big deal. Yes. Okay. So now this document is, I mean, we still have to define kind of how far do we want to stop when writing this document, because I could get into more detail than this and it could be a 20-page doc, but
yeah, I think the most important part of this document is because at some point it will reflect some kind of software architecture, that things are orthogonal or independent of each other, like that we have some kind of history that can deal. Oh, history is a bad example. That cannot really be orthogonal to the model. But for example, the curation system, that it's like a standalone module that works on the model, whatever the model is, because the model might change. Because right now, what we have in our minds will not be how the system will look like in the future. So we have to be kind of flexible.
Yeah, and my preference would be to keep systems architecture out of this completely. Like when you say that history has to be built in, it has to be built into the systems architecture, but it doesn't have to be built into the feature request list.
Okay, agreed. Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, but I mean, this is good. I think we got it down, and it's not too large unless someone wants to add more stuff. Are we missing anything?
It's interesting how quickly we came up with this document, and so far it makes sense to us. We should, like many more people who build their own systems, have something to say, I guess.
Yeah. So would the next useful thing be to go in here and maybe have people like highlight things that they disagree with, so we know where to continue discussions? or I don't know. I don't know.
I think that makes sense. That's a good idea. And the other thing is, I guess, because you already defined the glossary in a way to work on it. I mean, to build on it and to actually start defining the model, what the system is working on thing. Right?
Yeah, and actually, technically, we're out of time.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. So just for the next time, yeah, one thing you mentioned is people can comment this document and asynchronously, and next time we talk about it. And the second thing is we should actually start defining the model, which is probably graph-based model thing, because I think there we don't agree completely, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
Something
debate about
I
the
think
model.
yeah, another big point of disagreement is what we spent a long time talking about, which is the different aspects of context, how to implement them. Basically, do we need topics? Do we need context, CD context pointing to external graphs or internal knowledge graphs? These things are, we've already debated them several times and never resolved them. So that's one hot topic.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop the meeting now. People
Yes.
can make comments on the doc or, make changes, and then we'll discuss. We'll see what topic we want to, whether we want to go back to the glossary next week or continue down this path, whichever. Thanks, everyone, for your time. It was fun.
Thanks, everyone.
À bientôt. Ciao.
Bye-bye.